Hello, good evening, everyone. We're about to go live on the webinar on the S.P.P framework for raising outstanding children. And we are looking forward to everyone that's going to listen in today. If you can hear me, please kindly wave so I'll know that I'm audible. Hello, hope you can hear me clearly. All right, I thank you so much for joining in. I'm very grateful. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Thank you so much for joining in this audio session. I hope that it will be worthwhile for all of us. And as much as possible, I'd want to go straight to the point, so I will not keep you waiting for too long, because I understand that we all have our respective engagements, much more when we have family at home and it's evening and we might have to go on with our routines. First of all, I want to appreciate everybody that has logged on and is listening to this program. I don't take it for granted at all. And your expressing interest for this program shows your commitment to raising outstanding children. And I hope that today we'll be able to share, learn, and it will be a nice time. So today we are going to be talking about the S.P.P framework for raising outstanding children. So the first question I would ask is, why do you think that it's necessary to raise outstanding children? Because, like I said, for the fact that you are logged on means that you want to raise outstanding children and you want to know the better way to go about it. So why is this necessary? For me, one thing that is critical for us to all understand is that the family is the smallest unit in the community. So if we get it right at the family level, of course, our societies will be better off. When you think about people that have gone the wrong way, people that we see and we complain about their behavior, their actions, and all that, you will realize that all these people come from homes. They all have their respective homes. They were groomed by one person or the other, probably their parents or their guardians, but something went wrong somewhere and they turned out in one way. And for the people that are outstanding also, something must have gone right with their upbringing, because honestly, nothing happens by chance. You have the small subset of people who are self-motivated and without much help, they on their own decide that they want to be better. They want the best for themselves and they strive for it without any guidance. But on the average, that's why we talk about nature and nurture. Nurture plays an important role in how people turn out. And when we talk about nurture, there are different environments. We have the school environment, we have different social environments, but primarily is the family environment. Children are blessings from God, and parents have been given a very huge task, but quite rewarding, of molding these children to become the best versions of themselves. So as families, as parents, we have an important role to play in how our children turn out. So first of all, I want to highlight some objectives of this seminar. First of all, I hope that at the end of this webinar, we'll be able to understand what balance is in raising children. Balance is necessary. We'll be able to understand the key aspects in raising rounded children, and then we'll understand the mechanisms of inculcating the right values in our children, and we'll be equipped with what we need to know to help our children's all-round development. So now I want to create different scenarios based on some of the things I've experienced. I've been working for a while teaching young adults in a university, and I noticed some traits in different people. For example, I had this lady that was the vice president of the faculty's Christian Students Association. So this lady was very vibrant in the things that has to do with her spiritual development and the things of God. But while she was in school, she was struggling, and she always had receipts and repeats and all that. And I didn't feel happy about that. And one day I approached her and I told her that for the fact that you are an executive in the Christian association and you're not doing well, you're not portraying excellence. And the God that you're serving is an excellent God. And I feel that why she was that way, because she was skewed. She wasn't balanced in her timing and the things that she was doing. So I talked to her that day, and I must say that after that, she sat first, because primarily what she came to do in school was to acquire knowledge. So regardless of the fact that she has to develop herself spiritually, her academics should not suffer as well. So that is one of the reasons why we should have balance. Because when we have balance, when we excel, when we are outstanding, first of all, we are giving glory to God who made us and who created us for his own pleasure. And then when we as parents also help our children and raise them right, we will enjoy peace and will have a certain level of fulfillment. And thirdly, when a child is raised right, the child will eventually contribute his or her own quota and add value in her society or his society. So this is why there should be balance. I have another scenario, someone else that was actually also very vibrant in the things of the spirit while he was in school, but he came across to me as very arrogant. He was quite an arrogant boy, and he also struggled with his education. So I came to understand also, looking at him, that it's not just about being spiritual. There's also the place of developing your personality, working on your social skills. And then sometime, I think that was last year, there was this story that broke about, will I call him an evil genius? Some guy that had been quoted as by Forbes as being one of the emerging young millionaires and things like that, but eventually came out that he was hacking systems and doing a lot of underhanded things. That is an example of an evil genius, someone who is actually very smart, very intelligent, but was putting his intelligence to wrong use, which results from a faulty foundation and a deficiency in his character. So I think that with these stories, you'll have a better understanding on why balance is necessary, because it's not too good to do well in one aspect of your life and then another aspect suffers. So when we are raising our children, we should have it at the back of our minds that there should be balance between their spiritual development, their personality development, which has their social development and all that embedded in it, and of course we'll talk about their physical development. Sometimes we seem to overlook our children's physical development. We feel it's okay to, indulge them, just allow them do what they want to do, eat what they want to eat. After all, they are children. Allow them to probably not engage in activities and maybe probably tend towards being couch potatoes and screen addicts. But we have to understand that we need to pay attention to the spiritual development, the personality development, and the physical development of our children. So in my study, I actually realized that Jesus is a perfect example of one that had rounded development. It was the Bible talking about him when he was still a preteen, when he was around 12 years. They said that he grew in wisdom, he grew in stature. Wisdom talks about, for me, his intellect. He grew in stature. That talks about his physical development. He grew in the fear of God. That talks about his spiritual development. And of course, he found favor before men and God. So that favor talks about like say his personality development and his social development. So now there needs to be a balance across these three aspects, and as parents we should be able to drive it. So the next question is, what are the core aspects of their spiritual development and how should we work towards helping them develop it? Most times, parents leave the responsibility of their children's spiritual development to the churches or whichever religious organization that they belong to. While I understand and appreciate that these religious organizations have a huge role to play in the spiritual development of children, you'll agree with me that children only spend a little time in church or wherever they go to worship, and they spend the majority of their time at home. So that means that parents have a huge role to play in their spiritual development. And one thing you must know is that you can't give what you don't have. So for a parent to be able to groom a child spiritually, the parent should work on himself or herself to develop herself and himself to such a level that they'll be able to impact on their children positively. I want you to just cast your mind back and think about it. Considering the three key components of the S.P.P framework, which is the spiritual, personality, and physical development of your children, how would you rate their progress and your progress in helping them to become? Is there any area that is lacking, and what can you do? So now I've talked about the spiritual development, and then there's the personality development, and there we have to focus a lot on the children's character. There are different pillars of character, and these are things that we should model for our children while they are at home and while they are with us. The pillars of character includes trustworthiness, being respectful, being fair, being responsible, being caring, and also having the good sense of citizenship. And one thing about character development is that it has a rippling effect. A child that has developed good character will be a better person. That child will be more stable emotionally. The child will be more empathetic as an individual. The child will also be more self-confident. And self-confidence and self-esteem, they go hand in hand. And this self-esteem is very important in a child's life because it will help the child to form the right personality and, have a mind of his or her own, and wouldn't bend easily to pressure, negative pressure. So that's why one of the reasons why character development is very important. If I'm making sense, please just let me know in the comment section that I'm making sense. Thank you. If you concur with what I'm saying, please also indicate in the comment section so I can at least engage with you and know that you're hearing me. Thank you. So now, a lot of parents seem to focus a lot on their children's intellectual development. And I know that a lot of us want to hear about what we can do to help our children to be intellectually developed. But the question I always ask is, how do you define success? How do you define success? This is very important because sometimes parents unknowingly put their children under undue pressure, or parents might have unrealistic expectations that might arise from a wrong perception of what success is. Sometimes you hear parents make statements like, the person that came first in your class, does the person have two heads? So then you find out that sometimes parents attribute success or define success as having straight A's, or success as being the best in class. But then you ask yourself, if a child is the best in class and the child, for example, is scoring 67%, is he really the best? Is that excellence really? What I'm trying to draw out here is this, that success is a continuum, and for that reason, parents should not put their children under pressure by more or less comparing them with the next person, but helping and encouraging them to be the best versions of themselves. Children are wired differently. Science has even shown, for example, that males and females, the way their brains are wired, males tend to be more logical in thinking, and because of that, their numerical strength develops faster on the average. That doesn't mean that it's the same for every male. And then the females, who are more emotional and all that, develop literary skills faster and easier. So for example, you might have a son that is a number cracker, and then a daughter that is struggling a bit with numbers, or is impatient or not interested. Sometimes you might have that frustration, and you might express it and unknowingly even compare the daughter to the son, forgetting that they are wired differently and they are all running in their separate tracks. So I'd want to encourage every parent not to measure success by comparing your child with another child or with someone else in his or her class, but by who the child is and what the child's innate strengths are. And by the time you're able to identify their innate strengths, you work with them and help them to nurture those things that have been deposited in them by God. Because as far as I'm concerned, the whole essence of education is to help children to sharpen their innate talents. You have someone that is talented in drawing. The child should go to school and learn how to hone that skill so that he or she becomes more outstanding in that regard. So the critical thing I'm saying here now is this: let us be careful about how we define success. Try not to compare your child with another child, but encourage your child to be the best version of him or herself. In one of my children's school, they stream children by ability, and I have my reservations with that. So you have the high ability class and so on and so forth. And then my son told me something someday. He said that, "Mommy, the people that are in the lowest ability class, as they call it in the school, can do some things that he cannot do." Some of these children draw so well, and then I have this son that can't even draw to save his life, but is sound in some other areas. So you find out that these children might have been made to understand that they do not measure up by being placed in a lower ability class, whereas they are only in that level because they are mainly assessed in areas that are not their areas of strength. And then I've had instances, because by the time the children in his school, they move over to the senior classes, that is in secondary school, you find they stop the ability streaming and stream based on the children's interests, whether they want to be science students or whether they want to be art or whatever course it is that they want to do. And then he told me something else, that he observed that there was this particular girl that all through the time she was in junior school, she was never in the high ability class. She was more or less like in the struggling class. But by the time she moved on to senior school and went corely into her area of strength, she came out as the overall best in her set. So the question I ask you again is this: what is your benchmark for success? Because if you don't have the right benchmark for success, you can discourage a child, you can demotivate a child. So I want to encourage you today that you should study your children. I think that the best time to even understand a child's natural inclination is before their brain is messed up by school. Because by the time they go to school and there's a structured way of learning, you're just trying to get them to learn their math, their English, and science, and what have you. But in that, when they're at home and they're just being themselves and doing the things they enjoy, you'll be able to pinpoint what their areas of strength is, and then you'll be able to help them to nurture what it is that has been naturally endowed in them. And then another thing about intellectual development is that beyond the children's talents, Children also learn in different ways. There are different learning styles that apply to different children. Some children are auditory learners. They learn better when they listen. Some others learn more by the things they see, and some others learn by engaging in some form of activity. If you're able to identify your children's learning styles, you're also better able to guide them in their life's journey. Then another thing I'd want to encourage us to do is also not to just celebrate children because of their talents or their natural gifts, because they are gifts. It's not by their effort, but it's just what has been given to them by God. Rather, we should celebrate their efforts. This is something that makes for outstanding children. Children that aspire, children that are self-motivated, children that work hard, children that are committed to the cause that has been assigned to them. So let's try to remove our focus from celebrating the things that are their natural endowments, which are the gifts that God has given them. Just for example, say, oh, you're so smart, or you're so pretty, and things like that. But when they make an effort, put in their best to develop in one area or the other, we should by all means celebrate them. So their learning styles is also very important. And then another thing we should also do is you should encourage your children to have a growth mindset. Some people have fixed mindsets. They just feel that I can't change. This is how I am, or I can't be better in this, or this is no. This is not a good trend. And some of these things are critical success factors for anybody, whether as a child or even as they evolve into adulthood. But like I said, the most important time to instill these values in the children are when they are still young and impressionable. Then I've also noticed that being motivated, self-motivated, is one of the key things that helps children to do well or be outstanding in their intellectual pursuits. Because no matter, there's this saying that if you can take a horse to the stream, but you can't force the horse to drink. So sometimes you might try to get the children to do this and that, and they might not be cooperating. So we need to go back and find out what it is that is making them not to cooperate, and try to work on how to help them to become self-motivated. But because of the short time we have today, we'll not be able to go into how you can really, the details in how you can help your children to become more self-motivated, how you help them to develop character, and how you help them to, lead themselves in the right way. But I hope that in future engagements, we will be able to go into all that. But just before we round up, I want to talk about some critical things and some tools that you must have in place to help you raise outstanding children. When you have these tools in place, you can apply it in their children's spiritual development, in their personality development, and also in their physical development. First of all, the family has to have a value system and a culture. Like we learned probably in social studies, we've been taught that culture is the way of life of the people. In your family, what is your culture? Do you have a culture? Do you have a value system? And are your children aware of what your values are? Are they aware of what the value system in the family is? How do you set a value system? How to develop a culture as a family? First of all, there has to be unity of purpose between father and mother when they are both available and together. There has to be unity of purpose because you can't be doing anything you're doing in isolation. And then as a couple, this is something ideally one should have done before the children started coming. But that notwithstanding, it's something that you can still do even now. As a couple, you're supposed to agree on what you believe in the family, what goes and what doesn't go. This system, these values that you want to develop as a family is not something that you just decide at the spur of the moment. Sometimes you find a situation where parents at the spur of the moment. They don't know how to handle some situations and they might act irrationally. So it's important to be proactive by establishing a value system ahead of time, which the children are able to understand. And for whatever thing you have in your value system, there should be a reason behind it. For example, if in your value system you say that bedtime, for example, is by 8 o'clock, and your child asks you why, you shouldn't say that that is because when I was growing up, bedtime was 8 o'clock in my house. That's not a good reason. But probably you could tell them that sleeping helps them to maintain focus, helps the brain to regenerate, and for them to even retain the things that they have learned in school. So as you're establishing your value system in your home, you have to have valid reasons why you're doing what you're doing. And whatever thing you have in your value system are things that will help the children to become better, help them develop in character, protect them. Because, for example, you have rules maybe about how to use the social media, why you shouldn't talk to strangers and things like that. You do those things to protect your children. So whatever thing you have in your value system must have a reason, and the reasons must be the things that will help your children to be better. Then when you have these values in place, we have to set out rules and set boundaries, because there must be some level of control. So children know, for example, that it's not proper to take something from the fridge without asking first. Do you understand? You have to make sure that the children understand what the boundaries are. That is one critical thing, because they say that we should forget the days of ignorance and things like that. We should make sure that the children understand, because it won't be fair on the children if they don't know that something is wrong and they do it and you flip. So set the boundaries, have your rules, because as a parent you should show leadership and ensure that you communicate same to them in a way that they understand. And then for every rule you have in your home, of course there should be a consequence. The consequence can either be positive or negative. Positive consequences can just be affirming them for the right action they've taken, rewarding them in one way or the other. And then, of course, the negative consequences too. There are natural consequences. For example, if a child doesn't, do something, and because of that, there will be a natural outcome. Or there are logical consequences that you have told them. If you, for example, play your game for longer than you should, tomorrow you will not get access to that game. So you have to communicate the rules, the boundaries, and the consequences. And discipline should stem from the consequences that has earlier been highlighted to the children. So the children should know that if you say you're going to do this, you will actually do it. So when you tell your children something, for example, that this is a consequence for a certain action, make sure you follow through. When they break the rule, you must met out the appropriate discipline based on preset consequences. If not, they wouldn't take you seriously the next time. So sometimes you might, move forward a bit, fail sometimes and all that. I just want to encourage you to keep at it. We are not perfect. Every parent is work in progress. We are still trying to discover ourselves. We're still trying to figure out some things. But I just want to encourage you not to lose hope. Understand that this is something that you have to be intentional and deliberate about. And then you have to keep at it. Stay consistent over time. And whatever thing you're doing, make sure you do it with love. Then another thing I want to also highlight before we round up is about the gates of your children's hearts and minds. Communication is very important. So in the same way you communicate to your children, they can be exposed to negative forms of communication that can also corrupt their minds. And of course, some of these things gradually sink into their subconscious and cause them to inculcate some habits unknowingly. So as parents, we are supposed to, of course, help our children to man the gates of their hearts, their eyes, and their ears. And also, when you're communicating with them, you communicate with your eye so they will see and they will hear. Because sometimes parents might give an instruction, but they don't model what they see. So it's kind of confusing to the children. If you're trying to help a child to grow in character, you should also act well. But when you're saying something else and they are seeing something else, it's conflicting and you're passing the wrong message across. So what do you do? What do your children see you do? Because sometimes as parents, sometimes I'm even guilty of this myself, we might complain that the children spend so much time with their gadgets and things like that, and they don't pay attention to the things that are important. But you also will find out that you unknowingly spend a lot of time on your phone. So we have to be very careful about what we model to our children. Science has said that the brain has mirror neurons. And what does the mirror neurons do? It helps people to copy what they see. These things are subconscious. And then over time, you start expressing those things. If you think about yourself, you will find out that there are some things that you have unknowingly picked up from the environment where you grew up, maybe from a parent or something. So what we mirror to our children is very important. So I want to encourage us as parents today to be deliberate, to ensure that what we say and what we do, they match. So you'll be able to portray the right thing to your children. So now there are quite a number of things that if when we drill down into the framework, that we'll be able to understand what we should do per time to help our children with their spiritual development, the things that you should do with them and the things that you should do for them. Then also there are things to do to help them to build their character, and there are things to do to help them to take charge of their intellect and also of their physical beings, their nutrition, their mental health, their activity levels, and as they grow older, more about personal hygiene and things like that, and of course about their sexual and reproductive health. But because of the want of time, we'll have to round up shortly. But the summary of today's class or today's webinar is that balance is critical. And when we talk about balance, we are talking about the spiritual, physical, and personality development of the children. And it's important that as a family, you have a value system. You also have routines and rules, and you should communicate same to your children. So this will bring us to the end of today's class, and I'd want to share something with you. For people that are interested, we have a guide on how to help your children to develop character across the 6 pillars. So there are activities that you can engage in with your children. There are age-appropriate activities that you can engage in with your children, and some that you can get your children to do to help them to build their character. And then in our subsequent engagements, we'll also show you how you could help your children, how you can identify their learning styles, how you can help them to build focus, how you can help them to develop the right study habits, and other things that can help them also in their intellectual development. So if you want to get a copy of the guide, it's a free guide on the activities that will help with the character development. You'll see a link on the description for this webinar. Just click the link, fill the form, and we will get back to you. I sincerely hope that it's been a good time. It's been a useful time. And peradventure you have any questions or you want to reach out to us for one thing or the other, please don't hesitate to do so. You can also send your comments, your questions, and all that in the comment section, and we'll try to get back to you when we can. So thank you so much for tuning in and listening in, and we hope to engage more with you in the future. Once again, my name is Chineku Ore, and I'm your partner in Parenting Progress. Thank you.